Alright, what's cracking, party people? The purpose of this little video, it's going to be a quick one, is to show a way to improve upon methods to detect the start of the counter movement jump. So if you're watching this, you're probably familiar with the body weight plus or minus 5 standard deviation method, which is perfectly fine, but there are chances for misidentification of the actual start of the jump. And other methods have been presented, like using the maximum value calculated when you are obtaining body weight. But there's even a simpler way to select when either one of those events occur using MATLAB. Everyone here knows I'm a MATLAB junkie and want to present a way to simplify that for other practitioners using MATLAB and force platform data. So what I have here is some vertical force data during a double counter movement jump, so 2 rapid jumps in succession. And what I will do is, well, this part up here we don't have to worry about. I'm just going to use it. I just imported a file and obtained some force data, and need to calculate time from it. So I'm just going to take a couple of these lines, whoops, and calculate time, which again is totally irrelevant to the point of the video, but I'm also going to establish a half-second duration. So these are sampled at 500 hertz, so half second is 250 data points. So what I'm first going to do is plot the force data so we can see it here. And what I'll do is move the graph over to this side so we can see the code progression and selections and decisions made and the graphs that are going to come up over here. Eventually there will be multiple here. And so what we have here is the force in newtons and the data point number going through here. So you can see it's 2 total seconds here as they've gotten into the flight time. And I've titled this because the first one we're going to talk about is body weight plus or minus 5 standard deviations, and how to programmatically detect when the start of the counter movement jump occurs, which I think we would all say is around this time period. So first what I'm going to do is calculate the body weight for the first 5 seconds, the maximum value, the minimum value, and 5 standard deviations of the force, all during that half-second period. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Again, not focusing on anything in particular, but I have those values here, and you can see body weight. Whoop, let's make it something we can read. Body weight, just over 1,000 newtons. Alright, so now what we're going to do is, I have another video posted on my YouTube channel where we talk about what this is doing. But essentially we're saying if the maximum value, well, this is actually sort of irrelevant here, the maximum value. Essentially what we're doing is searching for when the force value here is greater than body weight plus 5 standard deviations, and we're searching for the first event in which that happens. We're also searching for another event in which the force value is less than body weight minus 5 standard deviations. Now this is conditional based on whether or not the maximum value in the body weight area is greater than body weight plus 5 standard deviations, because there's some work by Jason Lake out there, you know, the grand guru, talking about how that's a really influential piece that was often neglected. So we've incorporated that here. The second condition is if that weight value is not greater than that, then we're going to search for FZ here, and it's actually using the same method. So what I was doing was something a little more complex and decided, you know, it's kind of irrelevant. So this conditional statement, the second one, or even both to be perfectly honest, is unnecessary. So essentially I'm just searching these 2 things right here, which I could probably just run that without the conditional statement, right? And I have those 2 values. So when the FZ is greater than body weight plus 5 standard deviations. Okay, now what I'm going to do right here in this conditional statement that's important, and actually what I can do here is just, well, we'll leave it. We explained it, no big deal. Recording videos on the fly are always fun. So this conditional statement here is important. This is saying whichever one occurs first will be detected as the CMJ start. Now this is using the body weight criteria, or criterion, sorry, to make that decision. So what I'll do is just run that real quick. So it's in there, and now on this graph, I'm going to go ahead and add some horizontal lines to where body weight occurs, body weight plus 5 standard deviations, body weight minus 5 standard deviations. Then I'm going to add vertical lines where each of those two start thresholds occurred, so plus or minus body weight. And then what I'm going to do is add an annotation arrow that identifies the one that was selected first as the start time. So what we can see here is using this method, it identified the very first frame of data, and using the other criterion going below or above, it identified it, not very long thereafter, which is an issue because we know that that is not where any of this occurs. And now this graph is so little we can't even see the fluctuations here in terms of the size and the scale of what those values are. So let's go ahead and add another graph here. That's the exact same thing, but I've added some limits to the excuse me, to the y-axis. So the force value starts at 900 and ends at 1200. And so now we can see the fluctuation in force here, which from this graph is not very large at all. You would probably say that's a good standing trial. And here we have the dashed line of body weight, the solid line above of body weight plus 5 standard deviations, and then body weight minus 5 standard deviations. And you can see it's already exceeding body weight plus 5 standard deviations over here. So that first frame is where it's saying the counter movement jump started. I think we all know that would be a misidentification, and when you look at your graph and your data, it would all be wildly off. That's a problem because we like to use MATLAB A to programmatically select things for us objectively. But using this objective method doesn't reveal the correct approach. Now we can do some fixes to that where we tell it to start the search after you've calculated body weight, so it starts at the 1 second mark or 500 frames and all that. But now we're getting into something that's overly complex that may end up returning the wrong thing, because even if we started this as, if we're looking at the bottom graph, we said start our search at ½ a second, we're increasing above that threshold quite soon. So maybe not the best method. So what we'll do is go to this section of the code, and I'm going to go ahead and add the same plot on the right side of that figure window. The exact same graph, the exact same data. Now what I'm going to do is use the maximum calculated during the ½ second period when we calculate weight. So that's weight max, the maximum value during the body weight calculation period, so that ½ second. I'm also going to calculate or search for, let me get my words right, also use the minimum value in that period. And so we're going to use those two values as finding when that max value is exceeded by 5 standard deviations of body weight or is reduced for the minimum. And so I'll just run these two because we don't need the conditional statements anymore. That was just me being a little overkill. So we have those in, and again here on this set of lines is where we're going to say which one shows up first. These lines will add the horizontal vertical lines and the text arrow. And now you can see we have a completely different start of the jump, which looks more reasonable, but Is it perfect? Maybe, maybe not. And so what I'll do here is put the same graph in there with the same lines, just with the restricted y-axis values. And here we can see the, actually I think, yeah, okay, there's a problem with that one. I did weight max twice. So what I'll do here is subplot this guy again. There we go. And so we have our graph, which is fluctuating, but now we have body weight on the dash line. This is the maximum of the calculation during the body weight period, plus 5 standard deviations. This is the minimum force during this time period, plus or minus, well actually in this case it'd be minus 5 standard deviations. And now we can programmatically detect the start as when it increases above or decreases below that time period, and the first one of those, as noted by this arrow, is the start of the counter movement jump. Okay, now you'd say, okay, that's a better method. But there is some fluctuation going on here that maybe we're misidentifying this later than we want to right here. So how could we address that? And what I'll do is keep that figure window open, but we're going to do a new one to where I will only include the squished y-axis values. So you can see we're here now, and we only have the squished y-axis values, and we're using now body weight plus 5 standard deviations and body weight minus 5 standard deviations. And you can see on this line where you'd want to grab that would be the force value that intersects with this plus line, because that looks reasonably like the actual start. You could say this was actually objective, but that might not be what we want, or these, or these, or these, right? We know this isn't right. And all these values, even though they exceed the threshold, may not be right either. So let's use thisginput command. And what this is saying is I'm selecting the x-axis value, which I've labeled as, you know, the variable I want it named. I'm telling the y-axis I don't want anything with the little squiggly. And we're going to use ginput with one selection. And what this is going to do is bring up a crosshair on my graph that allows me to pick that value. So where I know this is reasonably at, I know I can go right on that line and intersect it on the force curve and click. Now I have this value of the start. Now this is not a whole number, so what I'll need to do is also round this value. So I'll add that to the code because I hadn't done it yet. And if I run this line, now we can see, wait, CMJ start. I wonder if I typed it wrong. Let's do this. Troubleshooting on the fly. Let's actually round. Let's see if this works. I'm just guessing here, but there we go. Round it to whole numbers, so 0 decimal places. And it's at 604 frame. So now what I can do is add my X line at this value. There it is. And let's actually do a text arrow. We're adding some code here on the fly. And there it goes. At this line where it intersects is the start of the CMJ. Now what if I wanted to use the maximum method? So I'll create a new graph here. Okay, so we'll put that graph, and now what we have is body weight with the maximum values and the minimum values. And you would still do the same process where you've used G input, but that crossing would go right here, and we know that that's probably not the best approach. So my suggestion would be to use body weight plus or minus 5 standard deviations and confirm its location or manually select it using this method, which will objectively show you where to select rather than misidentifying it at the beginning here or here or here or here or here or anywhere of these locations. You can put those two thresholds there and select the one that comes first. So if it actually reasonably reduced, without this loading, and it just went right into an unloading, you would know that that lower threshold was the start of the jump. So this code, you can rewind, fast forward, do whatever you want to. If you want to steal this, that's totally fine. This is just a way that I shot it up here today to do this video. So I hope this gives some insight into a way to use these start detection methods, but to use them in their most feasible way that doesn't complicate your process or slow things down. All right, catch you next time.